जगाओ, आप करता થઈ કાર્ય દીપાઓ, મંગળમય સુખ નિત્ય દેનારા, જય ઘનશ્યામ જય જય કરનારા, જય ઘનશ્યામ જય જય કરનારા.
At a time when spiritual knowledge had completely degenerated and ignorance had created an internal hostility throughout the world, and its travelers had lost their goal and had become confused about their aim, and the Vedic commitments were being misused to torment one another. The Lord of the imperishable, lustrous abode, Shree Swaminarayan mercifully manifested and presented to us the Shikshapatri, which is the booklet of guidance that leads one to salvation each day. I meditate upon this Shikshapatri.
O Shikshapatri, I meditate upon you, who has been incarnated onto the earth to purify its inhabitants and wash away the filth from those who wallow in the muddy pools of sansar and have become soil, and thus remove their internal darkness.
The Shikshapatri is comparable to a magnificent wand of kajal, with which to banish away the internal darkness. It must be studied with the utmost of respect in order to attain the divine light of spiritual knowledge.
The Supreme Lord Swaminarayan of Akshardham, who himself has assumed a human form, has presented this Shikshapatri, which is addressed to all his disciples living in different regions. You, O purifier, have been included by Sri Shatananda Muni in the scriptures Satsangi Jivan. O Shikshapatri, you are our mother and you liberate us from bhav, cycle of birth and death. Each day I meditate on you.
I take the shelter of Shikshapatri, which is comprised of the words of Lord Swaminarayan and incorporated into the scripture called the Satsangi Jivan by Sri Satananda Muni.
The Shikshapatri is the greatest of all divine nectars. It has been extracted from the vast ocean of milk, Kshirshagar, that exists in the form of all the scriptures. Salvation is acquired by those who drink this nectar.
Lord Shree Swaminarayan Swami, the protector and resort of all saints, has first offered the nectar in the form of the Shikshapatri to Muktanand and other disciples. Virtuous people who partake in drinking this nectar become empowered to annihilate all fiendish tendencies. We offer worship to the Shikshapatri nectar, which is the only medicine to indicate the disease of bhav, cycle of birth and death.
I pray to Lord Swaminarayan, who has assumed the guise of a Muni and has composed this collection of instructions with an intention of bestowing eternal welfare to all the beings that have fallen into the ocean of sansar, to always reside within my heart and constantly provide me with inspiration.
I pray to Lord Swaminarayan, who is son of Dharmadev and author of the Shikshapatri, who is granting his loving affection to all his disciples through his enchanting smile and lotus face to reside within my heart.
The Shikshapatri is another form of Sri Hari, Lord Shree Swaminarayan himself, which radiates its divine luster over the globe and offers auspicious bliss to all.
O Shikshapatri, you are reverentially prayed to by multitudinous disciples. The cause of all causes, Supreme Lord Swaminarayan has manifested you, and you are granter of all desired fruits. As such, you are another form of God, and I repeatedly worship you with love and veneration.
I have manifested this nectar in the form of the Shikshapatri for the benefit of the world, and it is worthy to be served divinely by all my disciples each day. Whosoever obeys these commands of God, divinely studies this Shikshapatri, will attain the supreme, eternal and magnificent divine Akshardham above Lord of Swaminarayan.
With all my heart I meditate on Shri Krishna, who resides in the divine abode Vrindavan with Radha on his left and Shri residing within his heart.
I, Sri Sajjana Swami, am writing this Kale. This is the scripture containing my comments and is directed at all my followers living in regions both far and wide.
Prasad and Raghuveer, the sons of my brothers born of Dharmadev, Rampatap and Ichara, respectively.
My brahmachari's lifelong celibates such as Mukund Anand and my Gruhastha, those with family associations, disciples such as Maharam Bhatt.
My female disciples, both married and widowed, and my sadhu saints such as Muktanand.
These are my divine blessings. They should be read with the remembrance of Lord Narayan. These commands have been sanctified by the scriptures and serve to protect the faith. You all should deeply contemplate as to the purpose of writing this Shikshapatri. It is meant for the benefit of all souls.
Those who abide by Sadachar, good conduct as described in the sanctified scriptures, that is, this Shikshapatri will attain happiness both in their current life and their next.
However, those who transgress and defy the rules of Sadachar will suffer immense pains both in this life and their next.
Therefore, all my disciples should live life devotingly, adhering to these holy commandments, with the utmost of attention, but must never contravene them.
My followers must never kill any being. Many creatures such as lice, bugs, insects should not be harmed intentionally.
Animals such as goats, deers, rabbits, fish should never be killed even for the purpose of religious sacrifice or ceremony. Ahimsa, the ideology of non-violence, is the essence of all scriptures, and thus its violation is unethical in every respect.
The killing of another person is forbidden, even for the attainment of wealth, woman, or sovereignty.
Committing suicide by consumption of poisons, by self-strangulation, or by any other method is prohibited, even if it is carried out at a holy pilgrimage site. Suicide is still not excusable even in a fit of anger or in a repentance of a sinful deed.
Eating meat is strictly prohibited under any circumstances. An offering to a deity or remnants of a ceremonial sacrifice should never be consumed if it comprises of alcoholic ingredients or meat.
The mutilation of your own or another's body must never occur, even if it is intended as atonement to your own unworthy actions or in revenge of another person's shameful deeds. This kind of disfigurement is still not allowed, even if it occurs in a state of uncontrollable anger or excitement.
Stealing even the smallest of items, such as fuel, wood, or flowers, is not allowed, even if it is intended for some religion-related purpose.
All my disciples, male and female, must never commit adultery. Vices such as gambling and the consumption of intoxicants, for example, hemp, is prohibited.
My disciples must never take food or water from a person of lower class status than themselves, even if it is prasad of the Lord. However, in Jagannath Puri, accepting prasad from persons of any class is allowed.
The fulfillment of one's own selfish aims or aspirations are no excuse for making false accusations or defaming another's character. The use of such offensive language is prohibited.
My disciples must never slander or even listen to the blaspheming of the following: Devta, deities, Tirth, pilgrimage sites or sacred places, Brahmin, people of God, Pativrata, chaste women, sadhus, saints, or Vedas, holy scriptures.
The Naivedya consecrated offerings from a deity to whom meat or alcoholic offerings are made, or where animals such as goats are ceremonially sacrificed, should not be eaten.
When passing a mandir of Shiv or any other deity, my disciples should bow down reverently, and in this way pay respect to the god within the mandir.
My disciples must never ignore the duties that would be expected of a person of their own class of religious standing. They should never adopt the rituals of another religion or any other heretical or self-fabricated ideology. One must avoid listening to sermons that could destroy the devotion towards the Lord or impede upon observance of devotional practices.
My disciples must never make a statement that could cause harm to them or cause the humiliation of another, even if it is the precise truth. They must sever associations with people who show no appreciation of their good actions. Bribes must never be accepted.
They must never associate with the following types of people: thieves, sinners addicted to drugs, the deceitful, those infatuated with passionate affairs and frauds.
My disciples should have no association with those who use a pretext of their devotion and knowledge to perform sinful deeds, such as hankering after women, wealth, or sensual pleasures.
No credence should be given to any scripture in which the glory of the Lord or his actor has been blatantly or carnally disputed.
Medication that comprises a meter alcohol constituent should not be used. To ensure that this will never occur, if the ingredients of a medicine are unknown, it must not be consumed.
The scriptures and custom have dictated where it's wrong for bodily functions, such as excreting, urinating, speeding, etc. To be reformed, my disciples must abide by these conventions.
My disciples should only use the entrances and exits of premises that are meant for that purpose. No building should be occupied without prior consent from the owner.
Male disciples must never listen to a sermon given by a female. They must never argue with a woman, the king, or his officials.
My disciples must never insult the following persons: one's guru, those held by society in high esteem or high social standing, learned scholars, or someone who is armed with a weapon.
No action should be taken without clear prior thought and rational about the consequences of that deed. However, religion-based duty should be performed immediately without hesitation. Any knowledge that has been gained should be conveyed to others so they may also benefit. My disciples should remain in association with others.
When visiting one guru, deity, or the king, one must never go empty-handed. Care must be taken to ensure that one does not commit any act which could breach the trust of others. Praising oneself for one's own action should be avoided. Any garment that leaves the body indecently exposed should never be worn.
Dharma has provided guidance for devotional practices and duties. The practices adopted by my disciples should remain within those prescribed. My disciples must never relinquish their devotion unto the Lord in fear of criticism or on account of another's ignorant ideology.
When my disciples visit a mandir on a daily basis or on religious festival days, each gender should be segregated, and thus physical contact between them should be avoided.
Those of my disciples who have received initiation into the faith by their guru, the Dvij, should always wear a double-string kanthi made of wood or tulsi. My male disciples should imprint an Urdhva Pundrit tilak on their forehead, chest, and both upper arms.
The tilak should be made using kopi chandan, yellow colored soil, or the chandan is sandalwood paste mixed with saffron, which remains after its use in the worship of the Lord.
In the center of the Urdhva Pundrit tilak, they should impress a chandlo. This chandlo can be the same chandan as the tilak or with the auspicious red kumkum used in the worship of Radha and Lakshmi.
My honorable disciples who do not fall into these higher classes of social status should still wear kanti made of tulsi and impress an Urdhva Pundrit tilak just as other classes do.
My disciples who remain unclassified into these categories are permitted to wear a double-stranded kanti made of sandalwood or another wood. They should impress a chandlo but no tilak on their foreheads.
My disciples who fall into the Brahmin class and who have a family tradition of adorning a horizontal tilak on their foreheads and wearing a necklace made of rudraksh are permitted to continue this custom.
My followers should recognize that Narayan and Mahesh are both identical because the Vedas have determined both as being Brahma.
The scriptures have stipulated that certain restrictions which normally apply may be relaxed during the time of adversity. My disciples can resort to such diminution of valleys, but only at the time of severest of calamities.
My disciples should awaken each day before the sun rises and immediately offer a prayer to the Lord before attending to their bodily functions.
Seated in one position, my disciples should brush their teeth and then bathe using clean water. One clean cloth should then be wrapped around their waist and another draped around their shoulders.
Clean mat or covering on the floor facing northerly or easterly direction and perform Atman.
My male disciples should then adorn the Urdhvapun, Tilak and Chalo. Females should only impress a Chalo using kumkum on their foreheads.
Widows should not adorn tilak or chandalas on their forehead. All my disciples should then perform Mansi Puja.
My disciples should then offer prayers and ceremonially worship the Murti, image or idol of Radha Krishna, Lord Swaminarayan, and repeatedly chant the name of the Lord. The length of time and the rituals adopted in this worship may vary from person to person depending on their individual capacity. Only after this may they proceed to conduct their own worldly affairs.
Even my disciples who have acquired high accolade within the satsang, Atmanivedi disciples such as King Amrish, must perform these daily rituals. They're allowed to proceed with their other daily affairs only after conducting Mansi Puja ceremony.
These Atmanivedi disciples should perform this daily ceremony to a murti of the Lord made of stone, metal, or to a shaligram, using chandan, flowers, fruits, etc., according to the time, place, and their own capacity. They shall then repeatedly chant the 8-syllabled mantra of the Supreme Lord.
They should sing kirtans or read religious scriptures in accordance with their own abilities. Those who are not versed in Sanskrit may chant the mantra of the Lord or recite incantations in praise of God. All food must be offered to the Lord first, and only then can be eaten. It should be considered the prasad of the Lord. In this manner, all my Atmanivedi disciples should dedicate every aspect of their lives to the devoted service of God.
The Supreme Lord is described as Nirgun, without any qualities of Maya. As a result of the close association of Atmanivedi disciples with the Lord, they too become relinquished of worldly qualities and acquire the same distinction.
Atmanivedi disciples must never drink water or eat vegetables, fruits, without first offering them to the Lord.
Because of old age or physical disability, if any of my disciples become incapable of performing their daily rituals of worship, puja, they must entrust their murti to another responsible devotee to perform these rituals on their behalf. They should continue with their mental worship of the Lord, depending on their own ability.
All murtis are worthy of reverence. However, only murtis that have been sanctified by the Acharya should be used in worship.
My disciples must attend the mandir every evening, where they should sing kirtan praising the Lord.
They should listen attentively to the discourses of the Lord's Leelas and his tenets. On special celebration days, the singing of the Lord's praises should be accompanied with the playing of musical instruments.
My disciples must conduct their daily lives in adherence with the aforementioned instructions. Depending on their abilities, they should study the religious scriptures in Sanskrit or their own mother tongue.
All tasks should be assigned to the most appropriate person, having taken careful consideration of their skills and abilities.
My disciples who employ servants must ensure that their basic sustenance is provided adequately depending on one's financial situation.
People should always be addressed in a manner that would befit their virtues and status. The most appropriate salutation should be used only after carefully considering the time and particular situation.
My disciples should always demonstrate the utmost of consideration and humbleness. When approached by Guru, King, an aged person, or a Tyagi, Sadhu, scholar, or a Tapasvi, ascetic,
My disciples should always stand up and suitably welcome these respected persons.
In the presence of a guru, god, and a king, or in their assemblies, my disciples must never sit in a posture that could be considered disrespectful. For example, sitting cross-legged inappropriately or with knees bound with a cloth.
My disciples must never argue with their acharya. They should offer reverence to the acharya by donating food, money, and clothing according to their own means. On hearing of his arrival, my disciples should immediately go to welcome the acharya from the village outskirts. On his departure, they should accompany the acharya to the edge of the village.
Any act that contravenes dharma, the obeying of sadachar, that is good conduct, must never be performed, even though it may seem immensely profitable at the time. Only dharma is truly able to bestow real prosperity. Under no circumstances should dharma be abandoned.
My disciples may follow the examples of great individuals in history, but only if their actions have adhered to dharma, no irreligious or unworthy act that these historical figures may have conducted should be emulated or used as an example to justify one's own disobedience of dharma.
Care must be taken never to expose another person's secret or private affairs. My disciples should ensure that others are given due respect and priorities. Depending on their individual's merits, they should not be all considered equal.
During the Chaturmas, the 4 months of monsoon season, all my disciples must observe extra vows. Those who are unable are permitted only to observe these vows during the month of Shravan, the 10th month in the Hindu calendar.
The vows should comprise one of the following: listening to the divine biography of the Lord, reading this divine biography, singing kirtan in praise of God, performing Mahapuja, chanting the name of the Lord, reciting the verses depicting the glory of God, performing Pradakshina.
Performing Sashtang Danvat Pranam, 8-fold prostrations before the Lord's Murti. During these months of Chaturmas, an oath must be taken to perform at least one of these devotional practices daily.
All disciples must also observe the vows of Ekadashi, 11th day of each half of every month. Such vows must also be observed on the birthdays of Krishna, etc., and on Shikshapatri, and these occasions should be celebrated with great ceremony.
Sleeping during the day of a fast is forbidden. Performing sexual acts during a fast invalidates the vow. In a similar manner, sleeping during a fast also invalidates vows.
Shri Vithalnath Ji, the son of Shri Vallabhacharya and the advocate of the philosophy of Vaishnavism, has given clear directives about how to observe religious vows and festivals.
My disciples must observe all vows in strict adherence to these procedures as described by Shri Vithalnath Ji and should adopt these methods for their own devotional practices.
All my disciples should visit Dwarika and other sacred places of pilgrimage. They should give aid in charity to help the needy according to their individual means.
The following 5 deities should be held with the highest of reverence: Vishnu, Shiv, Ganpati, Parvati and Surya.
If they become inflicted by a spirit or ghostly apparition, my disciples must chant the mantra of Narayan Kavach or the Hanuman mantra, but they must never resort to using the spells, mantra or incarnation of the deity who has a lower status than this.
During a solar or lunar eclipse, my devotees must stop all other activities, purify themselves, and chant the mantra Swaminarayan of the Supreme Lord.
When the eclipse is over, they should bath fully clothed so that the clothes are also washed and purified. My Graha, this eclipse should give charitable donations according to their means. Tyagi should perform puja to the Lord.
My disciples from all 4 social classes must observe Sutak, restrictions that are applied when a birth or death occurs within their close family.
in accordance to the rules stipulated in the scriptures.
Brahman should possess the qualities of calmness, self-discipline, forgiveness, and contentment. Kshatriya should be brave, courageous, and confident.
The Vaishya should be engaged in agriculture, trade, commerce, banking, and other such professions. My devotees of the Shudra class should serve the other three classes.
At appropriate times, my village disciples should perform rites in strict adherence to the religious scriptures and in accordance to their own monetary capacity. These rites include 16 purification ceremonies performed throughout a lifetime, daily rituals and shran, making ceremonial offerings to deceased ancestor or relatives.
All my disciples must appropriately atone for any sins that they have knowingly or inadvertently committed.
The four Vedas, Vyasutra, the Purana known as Srimad Bhagavat, the section of the Mahabharata called Vishnu Sahasra,
the Bhagavad Gita, the Vidurniti, and the Sri Vasudev Mahatmya, section of the Vishnu Granth that is found in the Skand Puran, one of the 18 Purans.
In the Yajnavalkya Smriti section of the Dharma Shastra, these are the 8 scriptures that I have chosen and which have a special significance. It is in the best interest of my disciples that they listen to the recitals of these 8 scriptures. My Dvaj disciples should study and give the sources about them. When resolving issues about moral conduct, social custom, repentance, one should consult the Yajnavalkya Smriti with its Mitaksha commentary from these 8 scriptures. To understand the glory of Krishna, the 10th and 5th sections of the Srimad Bhagavat should be referred to.
When seeking guidance about bhakti, devotion, yoga, uniting with the Lord, and dharma, religious conduct, one should consult chapter 10 and chapter 5 of Bhagavat and Yajnavalkya Smriti respectively.
My spiritual philosophy is quoted within the Sri Bhashya commentary given by the Ramanandacharya about the Vyasutra and the Bhagavad Gita. There's section from these 8 scriptures that discuss the Lord Murti and which give guidance about Dharma, Bhakti and Vairagya. Should be given a greater emphasis than the other sections, because the common teaching of all these scriptures is that the devotional practices to the Lord must be in accordance to Dharma.
The definition of Dharma, as described in the Shruti and Smriti, is to live with Sadachar, good and moral conduct. Bhakti is defined as an immense love for the Supreme Lord that is combined with a genuine understanding and knowledge of His greatness.
True Vairagya is to have no affection for anything or anyone except for the Lord. Gnan, spiritual knowledge, is defined as an understanding of the form and characteristics of Jeev, soul, Maya, worldly illusion, and the Lord.
Jeev exists in one's heart. It is infinitesimal in size and is a fully conscious entity. It pervades throughout the entire body and knows about its every aspect. Jeev has the special qualities of being achedya, indestructible, abhedya, impenetrable, ajar, imperishable, and amar, immortal.
Maya comprises of 3 qualities, sattva, rajas and tamas, and it is dark in complexion. Maya is the power of the Lord, and it is this Maya that makes one consider his physical body and his family relations as truly belonging to him.
Just as Jeev lives within our hearts, the Lord resides within Jeev by virtue of his power to know everything. The Lord does not have any restrictions. He is almighty and able to do whatever he pleases. The Lord repays the deeds of everyone in an appropriate manner.
The Lord, Sri Krishna, is the greatest entity. I admire him the most. He is the cause of all other incarnation and is thus truly worthy to be worshipped.
When Sri Krishna is united with Radha, he should be referred to as Radha Krishna. When he is with Lakshmi, he should be known as Lakshminarayan.
When he is with Arjun, he should be known as Narayan. Similarly, when Sri Krishna is with Balbhadra, etc., he should be called using the appropriate name.
Sometimes Sri Krishna is seen with Radha alongside him. At other times, because of her immense affection for the Lord, she merges within him. The Lord should then be considered to be alone.
Because of these differences, one must never consider Sri Krishna as having multiple forms. If he does appear in a different guise, such as in a form with 4, 8, or thousands of arms, that is because of his own will.
All people upon this earth should worship this Lord. They must acknowledge that only ardent worship can lead them to their ultimate aim, salvation.
The greatest reward for the virtues of scholars is devotion unto the Lord and the satsang. The association with his Sankalp Murti Sant and devotees. Without these, even a scholar will have to face degeneration and wander in the cycle of birth and death.
My disciples may meditate to the Lord, his incarnation or his Murti image or idol, but never to humans or other deities, even if they are the disciples of the Lord who have attained a higher spiritual status.
My disciples should have faith that their souls have become Brahmrup, have the same qualities as the Lord, and that they have become segregated from all three aspects of their bodies: Sthul, material body; Sukshma, invisible body; and Karan, eternal body. And having realized their great status, they should worship the Lord in an appropriate manner.
A narration from the 10th section of the Srimad Bhagavat should be heard daily. If this is not possible, its recital must be heard at least once every year. Those who are educated should read this section daily. Again, if this is not possible, it must be read completely at least once every year.
The Purush Charan of the 10th section of the Srimad Bhagavat. The Vishnu Shastra or other scriptures should be performed at a sacred site, as it is this Purush Charan that will enable one's wishes to be fulfilled.
In response to a tragedy, whether it is a natural disaster caused by another person or in illness, my action should always be in a manner the best protects themselves all others. They should never behave in any other way.
My disciples should appropriately adapt their behavior in the manner which they deal with other people and the methods employed in the atonement of sins that have been committed according to the particular situation, which is the place, time, age, means, social class and ability, etc.
You should all know the following. I promote the philosophy of Vishishtadvait. The abode I hold dear is Golo. Rendering services to the Lord in that abode, believing oneself to be Brahmarup, is considered by me the attainment of true salvation.
All the rules stated previously are equally applicable to all my disciples. From here onwards, I shall recite the individual obligations of each category of disciple.
The son of my younger and older brothers, Ayodhya Prasadji and Raghuvarji, must never give gardens or initiations into the religions to any female who is not closely related to them.
They must never touch or speak to unrelated women. They must never show cruelty to anyone. These acharyas are forbidden to hoard money for other people.
In social affairs, they must never act as surety for anyone. If they fall upon hardship, they should beg for alms for their sustenance, but they must never ask for loans and become in debt.
If any disciple has given them grain as a religious donation, it should never be sold. However, if it is old, it may be exchanged for new grain. Such exchange should never be considered as selling.
We must ceremonially worship Kampatiji on the 4th day of the bright half of the Bhadra month,
And on the 14th day of the dark half of the Asa month, we must worship Hanumanji.
I have established these Acharya as the Guru to all my disciples, so that they can act as protectors of the faith. They should give Diksha, initiation into the faith, to all Mumukshu, people who are seeking salvation.
The Acharyas should give inspiration appropriately to all their followers, so that they can uphold the respect responsibilities and rules of religion. The Acharya must maintain a great respect for all sadhu, and they must study the holy scriptures most reverently.
They must perform rituals and ceremonies before the Murti of the Lord, such as Swaminarayan, whom I have installed in the big temples.
Anyone who approaches the temple of the Lord in search of food should be welcomed and suitably provided for, according to the financial capacity.
They must establish schools and employ educated scholars to teach in them. The spreading of knowledge amongst the people largely is considered a very commendable deed.
The wives of the Acharya initiate women into the religion according to the directions given by their husbands. They must never give initiation to men. The wife of Acharya must never touch, must never talk, or even show their faces to any man who's not closely related with them. My Grahastha, male disciples, must never touch a widow, except those who are close relations.
My male Grahastha disciples should never stay in solitude with their young mother, sister or daughter, except if this is absolutely unavoidable. They must never give away their wife to another person for any reason.
They must never associate with a woman who has involvement with the king.
If unexpected guests arrive at their home, my Gruha's disciples should welcome them and offer them food, etc. in accordance to their means. Rites to the gods and to ancestors should be performed appropriately.
They must serve their parents, Guru and the sick throughout their lives in the best manner they can.
My disciples should engage in a suitable vocation depending on their abilities and their social class. Those who are engaged in agriculture must never castrate bulls.
Madra's disciples should ensure that they have sufficient funds and foods for the future needs of their families. If they keep cattle, aggregate fodder must also be set aside.
Our disciples may only keep cattle or horses if they have sufficient means to provide for them adequately food and water. Otherwise, they are forbidden from keeping animals.
Transactions regarding land or money should never be made without adequately witnessed documentation, even if they are dealing with their own sons or friends, etc.
Financial arrangements which are related to marital issues should never be made just verbally. Written and witnessed agreements should always be made.
All Gruhast disciples must be aware that their spending should be in accordance to their own income. If expenditure exceeds their means, they have to suffer a hardship.
They should keep a track of all the income and expenses. Each day they should recall and clearly record all the transactions they have made.
1/10 of all income should be offered to the Lord. If they are poor, my disciples may donate 1/20 of their earnings. This may be in the form of money or grain.
My disciple must observe the ritual of Ekadashi and other religion fasting days according to the rules stipulated in the scripture, depending on their own individual capacities. These observances are very important because they are a means by which wishes may be fulfilled.
In the month of Shravan, my disciples should perform the worship of Mahadev using items of ceremony such as the leaves of the billy tree. Alternatively, they may appoint another person to perform this ceremony on their behalf.
A situation must never arise whereby my disciples owe money etc. to their acharya or to the mandir. My disciples should never borrow utensils, ornaments or material from the acharya or from the mandir for their own personal use.
My disciples should not accept food from anyone during their journeys to pay homage to the Lord, their Guru or to a sadhu. Similarly, whilst there, they must eat food bought from their own earnings. This is because in these instances, eating food from another person deprives the merits gained from this pilgrimage.
If any of my disciples employ workers, they must be paid in full with the amount that has previously been agreed. They must never be underpaid. When the debts are settled, others should be made aware that the amount owed has been repaid. Dealings with unscrupulous characters must be avoided.
If their lives and properties are threatened by a misfortune such as famine or terrorization from enemies or the king.
My wise disciples should move away and migrate to another region where they can live in peace, even if it had been their birthplace or if they had lived there for many years.
My disciples who are wealthy should instigate yagna, that is non-violent sacrificial ceremony, to please the Lord, and on special celebration days they should offer food and alms to Brahmins and sadhus.
My disciples who are wealthy should celebrate grand festivals in the Lord's Mandir, during which they should distribute alms and other offering to deserving Brahmins.
My disciples who are kings must govern in accordance to commands stated in the scriptures. They should regard each of their subjects as their own children and take care of them accordingly. Religion should be established and maintained throughout their land.
King should be familiar with all its different aspects of governing, such as creating and maintaining the relevant policies, social decorum, etc. A good king should have an instinct to recognize a person's nature from their mannerism and thus distinguish the wise, practical and virtuous people from others. They should be able to determine who is guilty and who is innocent of judicial disputes.
Married ladies must serve their husbands just as they would serve the Lord. Even if their husbands are blind, ill, poor or impotent, they must never utter an abusive word towards them.
Under normal circumstances, married ladies should not associate with other young, handsome or charismatic men.
Pativrata ladies must ensure that their navel, thighs and chest are kept covered and are never visible to other men. They must keep their body fully clothed. They should never watch obscene shows or associate with shameless and immoral women.
If their husbands are away for an extended period of time, they should stop wearing jewelry and expensive clothing. They should not visit other people's homes and should remain solemn during this period.
Widowed ladies should serve and worship the Lord just as they served their husbands when they were alive. They should remain under the guidance of their father, son or other senior relatives, but should never contravene their directives and behave independently.
My widow disciple must not touch or even speak unnecessarily to young men who are not closely related to them.
For the same reasons as touching animals of either sex is not considered a sin, widows may touch baby boys because this is also not sinful. Under extenuating circumstances, they are allowed to touch and talk to older men.
My widow disciple should never be taught or instructed by a man who is not closely related to them. Widowed ladies should keep a restraint on their bodies and senses by repeatedly fasting and observing other vows.
If my widowed disciples do not have sufficient fund to last them through their whole lives, they should not give donation even for religious purposes. If they have surplus funds, they may give donations.
Widows should eat only one meal during the day and sleep on the floor. They must never look at the other birds and animals that are engaged in coitus.
Widows should always wear simple clothes and should never dress like a married lady. They should not dress like an ascetic woman. Their clothing should reflect the customs and traditions of the place they are living and should be in accordance to their family traditions.
My widow disciples should neither associate nor touch someone who performs abortions. They should never talk about men using sexual or sensual connotations. They must never listen to others who are talking about men in this way.
Widows should never remain in solitude with any young man, even with those who are closely related, unless there are extenuating circumstances.
They must never take part in the holy festivals of color celebrations. Widows should refrain from wearing jewelries of fine clothing embroidered with the gold thread, etc.
Both married and widow ladies never must naked bath. They must never conceal the fact that they are having menstrual period.
During their menstruation period, both married ladies and widows should not touch other people's clothes, etc. for 3 days. On 4th day, they may resume normal activities after bathing.
My disciple who are brahmachari must never talk to or intensely look at women.
They should never talk about or listen to others who are talking about ladies. They must never go to bath where there could be ladies in the vicinity. Brahmacharis must not touch or intentionally look at building, statue or other images of females. These restrictions do not apply to image of deities.
Brahmacharis are not allowed to draw, paint or create any images of women. They should never touch any cloth which has been worn by a lady. Brahmacharis must never look at birds or other animals that are engaged in courtship.
My brahmachari's disciples should not touch, glance at or speak with a man who is disguised as a woman. They are not permitted to give religious sermons to ladies.
Even a command from their guru should not be obeyed if it means that their vow of celibacy will be broken. Brahmachari should always remain compassionate and humble.
If they see a woman impetuously coming within their vicinity, the brahmacharis must stop her by speaking out or even using forceful language, but they should never let the lady come near them.
However, if a lady's or their own life is in danger, they should always do what is required so that both lives are saved under such extreme circumstances. Brahmacharis are permitted to speak and touch a lady. Brahmacharis must not apply massage oil to their bodies. Their appearance must never incite fear into people, and they should never carry weapons. They must control their sense of taste.
Brahmacharis are allowed only to ask for alms at the home of a Brahmin, where the distribution is done by men. If women are handling out the donation, they must go elsewhere.
They should study the holy scriptures and faithfully serve their group. They must avoid contact with effeminate men in the same manner as they avoid all association with women.
My disciple of the Brahmin class of society must never drink water that has become contaminated by contact with leather. They must not consume onion, garlic or any other such food. The scriptures have prohibited.
Before each meal, Brahmin must bath, offer a prayer to the Lord, recite the Gayatri Mantra and perform the ceremonial worship of Sri Vishnu.
The rules for brahmacharis concerning abstinence with respect to women must also be obeyed by sadhus. They must gain full control of all their internal enemies.
Sadhus must have full control and restraint of all their indriyas, especially their sense of taste and preference. They are forbidden to hoard money, both themselves or through another person.
They must never act as surety for anyone. Sadhu must always display tolerance towards all. If they are living in unclosed location, no lady should be allowed to enter that vicinity.
My sadhus must never travel unaccompanied at night or during the day. Only under the most exceptional of circumstances are they allowed to travel alone.
Sadhu must not wear clothing, wrap shawls or use blankets that are expensive or dyed in various colors and patterns, even if they are gift for another person.
Only reason that they are permitted to go to the Grahastha's home is to ask for alms or conduct a ceremony. Sadhus should occupy themselves in performing the ninefold of bhakti to the Lord, but should not waste their time doing anything else.
Only homes where men would be serving the cooked food and where there would be no possibility of having any contact with women.
Sadhus may only go to such a guru's home to dine. If this is not the case, they should ask for grain and cook it themselves. Having offered this food to the Lord, they may consume it.
Bharata, son of Rishabdev, lived upon the earth, having a total indifference to his own worldly needs with total dedication and devotion to the Lord. My sadhus should endeavor to live their lives according to these ideals.
My brahmacharis and sadhus, disciples must never eat pan, flavor seeds and betel nuts, etc., wrapped in a betel leaf, or consume opium and other narcotics including tobacco. They must remain diligent to ensure that the consumption of this is completely avoided.
Brahmacharis and sadhus must never eat at feasts held during the performance purification rites or at meals that are given as alms for 11 or 12 days after someone's death.
Sadhus and brahmacharis should not sleep during the day unless they are ill. They should refrain from gossiping about others or listening to others who are gossiping.
They should not sleep on a bed unless they are very sick. Brahmacharis and sadhus must always remain honest and should not show any kind of deception towards any other sadhu.
If anyone demonstrates cruelty towards them, either verbal or physical abuse, my sadhus and brahmacharis must endure this malice, but they must never retaliate. They should forgive these cruel people and pray for their welfare. Not even a bad thought towards them should enter their minds of my brahmacharis and sadhu disciples.
Brahmachari and sadhu must never be deceitful or cunning in their actions. They must never be slanderous or spy on other people. They should not be arrogant or egoistic in their nature, and they must discard any affection toward their worldly relatives, families before they take vows as a sadhu.
The rules for all that I have stated in the Shikshapatri are merely written in a concise form. Explanations for the reasons behind each of these slokas should be sought from the other texts of my religion.
I have collected and narrated the essence from all the scriptures of the Shikshapatri. By obeying these commands, all of one's wishes will be fulfilled.
Therefore, all my disciples should always strictly abide by these rules, but never according to their own will.
My disciples who live their lives according to the Shikshapatri will inevitably attain the four Purusarthas.
Those who disobey the commands of the Shikshapatri should be regarded as having no affiliation with my religion. All of my religion must accept this.
My disciples should recite the Shikshapatri on a daily basis. If they cannot read, they may listen to its recitals.
If there is nobody to narrate it to them, they must offer worship to the Shikshapatri every day. My words are my Murti itself and therefore should be revered and respected with the utmost of importance.
Shikshapatri should only be given to the people who are aspiring to achieve spirituality, but never to those who have fiendish nature.
I wrote this Shikshapatri on the 5th day of the bright half of the Mahamonth in the Samvant 1882. Obeying its commands will lead to your salvation.
May such a merciful Lord, Lord Swaminarayan, who destroys the pains of all his disciples, fulfills their wishes, and who protects the faith, bestow his divinity upon us all.
SGadiManinagar Swaminarayan Gadi Sansthan